Hello, everybody. Today I'm talking to a dear friend, a traveler of quite a parallel path to my own, and someone who will need little introduction to most of you, Magenta Pixie. Pixie is a really fascinating soul who's shining her beautiful light quite brightly through this life of hers. She's a channel for the white-winged collective consciousness of nine, with whom she's produced quite a prolific collection of YouTube videos on a vast array of subjects. And beyond that, Pixie also provides private consultations in which she offers psychic readings and channeled answers to questions. And you can find Pixie on the web on her website, www.magentapixie.com. Visit her site to browse the aforementioned massive collection of channelings in the form of YouTube videos, or to book her for a private consultation, or to find additional offerings and free stuff from Pixie. And today I'll be having a conversation with Pixie to allow her to share a little more of herself with you. So let's begin with Pixie herself. Hello, Pixie.
Hello, Zingdad. On Zingdad. Hello.
On Zingdad, yeah. It's
Yeah.
simply delightful to have you with us here today for today's conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me along to interview me. Very pleased.
Lots of fun to be had, I'm sure. Now, Pixie, on your website, under the About menu item, you share a rather endearing story beginning right in your childhood of how you came to channel the White Winged Collective eventually. And since I'd like to invite our listeners to read that, I won't be rehashing that story in this interview today. Rather, I'd like to begin with my three favorite questions that I like to ask people. I find these questions to be a lovely way to get people to introduce themselves to us, and I'm going to give you all three so that you can see where I'm going with it. The first is, in what ways do you think you are similar to everyone else? The second is, in what ways do you think you are quite unique or different from others around you? And then the third one is, if you look within to the unique light that you bear, what would you say is the gift that you have to give to life? So those are my three opening questions. Ready, steady, go.
Okay. Wow. Excellent questions. How am I similar to others? We're all on the same journey. We're all, from the higher perspective, we're all at the same level. We're all human. We are all going through the challenges that the third dimension brings to us, and we are all merging the higher dimensional self with the physical self. So we are all the same in that respect. How am I unique to others? In the way that I'm one of the individuals who's been able to activate the DNA, if you like, or another metaphor, tune to a different radio dial and make that connection with the higher dimensions and make a communication with them or it, or however you want to see it. So I'm unique in the way that I'm able to communicate with the higher dimensions or connect with the deeper aspect of myself, that super consciousness aspect, if you like, that is able to access memory that goes beyond this current lifetime. Access memory that you don't have in your experience in the third dimensional life. So unique, and yet there are a lot of individuals who are doing that. So how am I unique individually? I suppose in that way, we present our connection and our teaching in different ways. So the way I present that connection through the white-winged collective consciousness of nine and that construct, that consciousness, the messages that they have, the way I present them is unique. Each individual that's similar will have a unique way of presenting their information. So we all are unique in that respect. So that's where I would see my uniqueness. And if I look within, what is the gift that I have to offer life? On a more collective level, I've come in on an indigo frequency, and indigos are very giving in the way that they understand their mission once they become activated, and they are here to make major change. And that side of them that is so hurt and horrified by the way the system is, they turn that around and think, okay, how can I help? What can I do? What can I contribute? So the indigo aspect of me is probably the main side of me that is a gift. And within that indigo frequency is the ability to, or the desire to speak. You really feel as though you want to get out there and talk about what you know. So that's a gift as well, as long as I remember not to talk too much. So that would be the answer to those 3 questions.
Beautiful. I'm enjoying the similarity, especially that one about remembering not to talk too much. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So,
me.
me too. Now, the story that you share on your website, and really I would encourage people to go and have a look. Go along and find magentapixie.com and have a look at the About section, and there's a gorgeous story there. That story is about this human person called Pixie. It's about her childhood and then growing up and then finding this connection to a very special spirit entity and learning to bring that entity's message through and so forth. It's a good story, a human story. But I'd like to ask you about a different story, a spiritual story. I'm quite sure you must have delved into your own past lives, into your own multidimensional existence. And I wonder about that aspect of your story. How did you, as a spirit being, come to be here now? And I know that's a massive question, but perhaps you could pick an angle on that and tell us what you know of how your spiritual story led you to be doing what you now do.
I knew you were going to ask me this question. Last night I was thinking about our interview and instantly I knew you were going to ask me this question.
We obviously tuned to the same station.
Yeah, it is a big one. The first memory I ever had of something outside of this life, something in the past, if you like, was when I was 7. And I think this probably is in that story on my website. I'm not sure. I just had a drink, a cup of milk, I believe. Dreadful, but anyway, I don't drink milk anymore, but I did when I was 7. And I remember looking at the cup and all of a sudden I just had this feeling to try to move the cup with my mind. So I'm concentrating on this cup and I'm trying to move this cup and then I'm getting really frustrated. And I remember thinking, why can't I move the cup? I know I used to be able to do this. I even remember going downstairs and saying to my mother, I've tried to move a cup with my mind and I can't do it, but I know that I can. I know I used to do it before. And she was used to all this, this stuff with me. And she would just say, oh, that's called telekinesis. It doesn't exist, So I went away, telekinesis. Wow, yeah, this feels right. I'm like 7. Other little proddings of other lifetimes. I have come in with a memory that I've always had, as long as I can remember. But I couldn't make sense of the memory when I was young. It was always there in my mind, but it was just like a void, really. And it wasn't until I became an adult and started to move into a spiritual path that I could try to decode this memory. And that memory is of coming in to something, I believe, into this planet, into birth. But the memory is of going down, kind of like I was going down a tunnel in a way, but it wasn't really a tunnel. It was just space getting smaller, moving from an expansive state into a thin, tiny state,
That
a constricted state.
compression
Exactly.
experience, yeah.
Exactly. And I came in with this memory. It was black, but the memory was of this intelligent, aware individual, not a collective, desperately hanging on to, I say his memories because I now know that I was male, as in the lifetime I remembered. So coming into this lifetime, holding on desperately to memories, being fully aware that memories were going to be erased, knowing that that was the agreement and not wanting that agreement, trying to cheat it some way. I desperately wanted to think there has to be a way to go in and retain memory. I'm not going to lose it this time. This is the kind of thought, but this was very much a frequency, a memory that I couldn't unravel as a child. But the word I remember, and me fighting desperately to hold on to these memories. And then it's lost, it's gone, the memories were gone. What I actually succeeded in doing, because obviously I was trying to do something, And it was from the point of perspective of an individual, as in another incarnation. What I actually succeeded in doing was holding a memory of something so that I was able to then unravel it when I got into adulthood. The memory was, there's something you need to remember. It's important, you need to remember this. And you tried so hard not to forget. That was the memory. So then the question is, what is it I need to remember? So those questions were with me from a very young age, because I remembered that there was something I needed to remember. The other memory was that there was a group of individuals. Now, I don't believe that this came through from that individualized stream of holding on to memories. This was more of a knowing within. This is more of a DNA activation. There was obviously a code or some codons that were still switched on when I was young, because the memory was, there's a group of people that are like me, and I need to find them. I need to reconnect with this group. Now, this memory came in around the age of 9, 8, 9, possibly 10 at the latest. By 10 years old, I was fully aware I was looking for a group. But in my young mind, I had no idea that that was a massive group of millions of people all across the planet. I thought it was a group of, at the local youth club or something. So I joined the local drama group, and that is where I found, and I now know that I connected with a couple of my soul group at that time. That's where I found people I could connect with outside of school, at drama. These were the theatre people. They were different, some of them. So I felt I'd found my group. But then, obviously, as I got older, I realised it's more than this. So that was one memory. But actual lifetimes, actual memories of living as someone else, that came through when I was in my early 20s. And what actually happened was I'd started to awaken spiritually, and I'd started to connect with my first spirit guide, who had spoken to me about past incarnations. So I knew that they were real, but hadn't had any memories. But I had been asking my spirit guide, is there any way that I can remember? I wanted to remember. He was telling me that that was a big thing, and that I had this impression that, regressing myself would be wonderful, and I'd have some amazing image of me being this perfect being in another lifetime. And, of course, it's not like that at all. Every lifetime has with it its challenges. So at the time, I was living in a flat with my brother, who was also going through a spiritual awakening, and we decided to, I don't know what made us do this. We'd never read about it, but we decided to sit there and stare at each other and stare into one another's eyes. I realise now what we were doing we were transfiguring one another, but we didn't know that. And as we connected by looking into one another's eyes, I started to see his face shift into many other faces, and I saw very clearly these faces, and I could feel my face shifting and moving, like there was heat, like there was some shape shifting going on. It's a very unique way of looking. You are using your physical eyes and your pineal gland simultaneously. We didn't know any of this at the time. He was shifting through face after face after face. Some I didn't know, some I recognized. And then there was one face that I recognized so deeply, it shocked me. And I remember taking an intake of breath, and I cut the contact between us, and he said, what did you do that for? Because where he was connected to me, my shock went straight through him. So we were learning all this stuff back then, and I just said, I saw someone in you that I know. I don't know how, but it's triggered this really deep emotional issue in me. And that night I went to sleep, and I had a dream, but it was more than a dream. I was actually there in a lifetime with this person, going through memory after memory after memory. So the transfiguration had triggered the memory. The next morning, my brother got up, and I looked dreadful and he looked dreadful. It's like we've been traveling for millions of years, and we both like, what happened last night? Turned out we'd had the same dream. And it was very weird. And this is something I haven't ever talked about actually before to anyone. We stood in the kitchen, and I was talking about my dream, and he was talking about his dream. And all of a sudden we just moved together, grabbed each other's hand, put our arms together. And I said to him, one day, and he and I then said in unison, "You will be my brother." And we sprang apart and, went to the other side of the kitchen in shock, because we were having these profound memories and we were really not quite able to cope with what was happening. It was a fast track awakening. We coped okay, but we were ungrounded. We had to learn to ground ourselves. So together in unison, we had said, "One day you will be my brother." So we both knew that we had been in an incarnation together, and that we knew that one day we would incarnate, well, as him, as my brother, not necessarily me as his sister. It turned out that my brother had had memories all his life, and without going into his personal details, which I don't have permission to do, all I can say is he was looking for a specific person since he was a child. I didn't know about this. I didn't know about his memories. And anyone he'd had a spiritual connection with, he had asked them, "Do you have these memories?" And he talked about this person he was looking for. And no one did. And when he then went through all this with me, I realized it was me that he'd been looking for, but he had no idea it was a girl, and I at the time was a man. And what the big joke was is I then had more memory come through of that moment when I was trying to grasp onto those memories. They started to come back then. So the unraveling had begun. I started to remember what it is that I needed to remember. And what I'd actually gone through in that lifetime was death to birth conscious transfer, the Nine call it, where I knew about future incarnations. I had a job to do. I wanted to continue doing that job. This is why I felt it was so necessary to project forward all the memories I'd had in that lifetime. And one of the things I wanted was to bring in my blood brother, if you like, this person I'd become blood brothers with, as an actual brother. What I forgot to, because you can create a future incarnation from an actual incarnation at the moment of death or prior to death, you can work on this. So this is what I did. At the moment of the death experience, I was conscious and projecting a new incarnation from that perspective. What I forgot to include was my gender, as I automatically assumed that I would be male. And
Wow.
so when I discovered I was a girl, it was a big shock and a bit of a laugh, really. But this person wanted to be hidden. This person did not want to be known for lots of reasons that's quite deep to go into. So being a girl was a good thing for this soul to do, actually. And then, I realized that it's good for me to have been female. So this then triggered a series of memories over several years of this particular lifetime, and what the mission was and what the job was and what the memories were. So that was the first memory. And then I then moved into other memories as well outside of Earth. So there are some memories of other planetary systems as well, which are sort of scant, few and far between. But I now have full memory of being born and coming into this reality, as in leaving the collective, individualizing, and then coming into an incarnation, which is a separate memory to the individual. So the individualized past life memory, death to birth conscious transfer, is one perspective, but then there's a wider perspective as well. And that soul isn't fighting against incarnation. That soul is pure. That soul wants to come into incarnation. That's the soul that maps their parents before incarnation, takes energetics from the matrix of their mother and their father, the caregivers around them, and the consciousness of the area that they're incarnating into, as well as the planet. So it's like coming down. So there are these two memories now that sit alongside one another. So that's really my past life memory, if you like.
Wow. I had goosebumps a number of times as you were telling that, and I feel such resonance for what you're explaining, because there are certain fundamentals in there that I see over and over again, when I work with clients and also in my own self-discovery. You talk about the experience of entering incarnation. There's the part of self,
Yes.
let's call it the inner self, the you that you are when you're not in a state of forgetting, that isn't in in no resistance whatsoever, that has chosen this, has signed up for this, has contracted for the whole experience, that is willingly taking on board all of these bits of burden, as you say, from the mother, from the family, from the broader context, and you
Yes.
willingly take it on board, knowing that this is part of the package. This is what it is to be a human. And
Yes.
if you are of a certain vibratory frequency, you know that by taking it on board, you're going to be participating in the transformation of all of this into something beautiful and bright.
Yes.
So absolutely
Exactly.
lovely. Um, Now I want to talk about your work with the White Wing Collective, and but before we get onto that, I'd like to touch on your work as a psychic, and I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask about that. Firstly, when a client asks you a question, let's say about their own spiritual story, what happens to you that you can find an answer for them? Do you see something, know something, feel something? What goes on inside of you?
Fantastic. Another fantastic question. If I can just quickly backtrack to just one comment about moving into past life memory, for anyone out there who's thinking, great, this sounds really good, I want to do it. Let me just add that when you move into past life memory of individual perspectives of other lifetimes, there is often pain and suffering that you will remember as well. So my experiences remembering that lifetime caused me a lot of pain and grief that I had to work with, and I had to learn to take my perspective away from that individualized lifetime, just as a extra bit of information. It isn't
A,
necessarily a rosy
a
procedure. So
very a very
yeah,
valid comment. I'd like to interject to your interjection by saying that,
excellent.
I consider past life work. I really don't consider it to be happy tourism of your own soul. I
Yeah,
consider it to be a profoundly healing thing, and it needs
yeah,
to be done with that mindset, because otherwise, if you're not ready to heal, if you just go and have a look, it can be quite shocking. It can be quite difficult to process,
yes,
and I wouldn't do
yes.
it if I wasn't ready to bring love and healing and a reintegrative view to those experiences that I'd find. So I absolutely
Yeah.
concur with what you're saying.
And you are a perfect facilitator for someone going through that, because when it happened to me, I had nobody. My brother was innocent to this as well, so I was kind of thrown in the deep end. I had my guides and they helped me through, and the reason I was thrown in the deep end is so that I would experience the fullness of it so I could teach it one day. So that's just one little thing to add in. So your question, okay, so when a client asks me about their past, their future, what I see, I actually work with photographs. I always ask for a recent, clear photograph, which not everyone likes to send photos in, and then they don't understand why I want one if I'm a channel. The reason why is because I see the matrix field, as in it's often known as the aura, but the aura seems to be a little bit of a wishy-washy term for what this actually is. The aura is conjured up a smoky, colourful light, and it is a field of information that is like a web or a graph. It's a living thing. It's sacred geometry with you could take one tiny square out of an infinite number of squares, move into that one square and find another infinite number of squares. This is how complex the matrix field is. So that's the aura. It is incredibly complex, as well as being very simple, which I don't really understand, but the nine tell me it is. But anyway, so when I look at the photograph, that's the central point of the person. So I look at their face. And once I connect with their face and their eyes through a clear, recent photograph, then the matrix field opens up and I can see the first layer, which is the chakra system, emotions, this lifetime. Then I move into the deeper layers. So when a client comes to me, I just look at the first layer of the photograph and the chakra system. So you go down that central pillar, looking from the crown down to the base, looking at each energetic, and then the first layer. Any deep traumas usually jump out at me, but that's where I stay. Then I see the client, and when they ask a question, then that will depend which part of the matrix I look at. So if it's a question, what planet am I from? Then the matrix shifts and I'm taken back to the planet that they're from. And then I then describe. So the psychic work needs to be simultaneous to channeling, because if I was only psychic, say I looked at you and decided you were from Lyra, for example. I know you've had a life there.
Just as a
Yeah.
off the top of your head kind
Yeah,
of
just off the
example.
top of my head.
Yeah.
So say I decided you were from Lyra and I was working on a psychic level. What I would see is one thread taking me to Lyra, which is the linear line of your soul. So the channeling would come in to open that up into a quantum field, because the answer would be, you're from all planets, all streams, you are from source, you have incarnated in a multi-inception point, your soul has come into many planets at once because there is no past or future. It all happens simultaneously. Only on a linear level am I taken to Lyra, because you have got, you probably are aware, a Pleiadian, a strong Pleiadian. Well, obviously through your guides you have. So yes, there's a Pleiadian link with you, as there is with me. So I see this through your photograph. So that's what I'm taken to, the matrix, and it takes me everywhere, unless I'm not allowed to go there. For example, if a client said, my ex-husband, has he got a new wife? Instantly there's a block. Why? Because I don't have permission to look at his personal path. It's not my place to say if he's got a new wife, because my client wants to know. That's not something I could answer. So, but if she said, does he still think about me? Then there's a connection between her and him. I can look at the connection. So I may be able to say yes, but that's it. I can't say what the thoughts are. So the matrix will show me what I can and can't look at, and the 9 will then channel information about what I'm seeing. So the psychic level, I guess, is me seeing the matrix, and the channeling is the communication with the 9. Having said that, the communication with the 9 is simply another perception of how to view the matrix. It's actually the same thing.
Fascinating. I have a bit of a tricky question for you about the whole business of being a psychic, of being someone that can know things about other people. If you can find their answers for them, what stops this from becoming a deeply dependent relationship? I mean, if I can come to you because I don't know stuff about myself and you can help me, then when I again need more information to continue perhaps my journey of self-discovery or to heal my own pain, I will surely come back to you. What stops this from becoming a relationship in which I begin to regard you as the bearer of my truth, the person upon whom I must depend to know anything at all about beyond my own 5 senses?
Oh, I think that's the best question I've ever been asked, actually, by anyone, really. I mean, it's so important. So the 9, before I started to go public, if you like, and take clients, already trained me in this. And that is that anyone who comes to me, the ultimate goal of the 9 is to empower them to discover their own reality. It is not ever to make them dependent on me, because you are correct. If I wanted to, I could engineer a way to make a client dependent on me, and they would keep coming back always, and I would have a constant client and steady income from that.
Good for business, bad for your soul.
Good for business, very bad for your soul, very bad for the planet, not a service to others frequency or a service to others vibration. The idea is you see a client once, you help them as much as you can, and you assist them to not need to come back to you. And you trust that other clients will come. And if they don't, then it means you're meant to be doing something else. That's the way forward. So that's the 9 trained me in this from the start. Now, I have had people that have become dependent on me, regardless of how I've tried to assist them. And then I will see them more and more and more until a point comes where I feel there has to be a release and for them to move on. And then I might suggest, well, come see Zingdad or whoever. I might pass them on to a different person, because it's always good to get different opinions from different people. This is rare. Most people do not become dependent on me. Most people are already in a situation where they are free when they come to me. They are fully aware that I am there as a mirror. I am there as confirmation of their own knowing. Some people do come to me with lots of questions and don't have that feeling of power within themselves, if you like. That's self-sovereignty. So then I teach them how to be this way. So what I do is when I look at the matrix, I say to them, like, explain to them how I'm looking at the matrix and explain to them how they can do the same thing. So the ultimate job is to teach the person how to do this themselves, so they don't need an outside source. They don't need a psychic. Unfortunately, we are not at the level on this planet yet where everyone is self-sovereign and where everyone has their own link that's strong with a good, healthy, flourishing matrix. Individuals are needing assistance from the others who are perhaps a little bit further along in the journey. Like I said, we're all in the same place. We're all on the same journey. So if somebody really doesn't have any understanding of their timelines or matrix, and they are solely coming to me for me to tell them what to do, then I will explain that I'm just looking at a probability field that is projected through your matrix through your frequency being your thoughts, words, actions, and deeds. Everything that you are, specific to thought and emotion, projects a probability. All I'm doing is looking at the most probable field, and I can also look at other probabilities that are less in probability, but if they shift in a certain way, then they will shift their matrix and they will raise the probability of other fields up and take the probability of other fields down. So I always show someone that there is more than one future for them and that they can create that future, and I teach them how they're doing that. But always, one thing the Nine have taught me to say is, when it comes to your teacher, your guide, your mentor, someone you put your all in, this is my spiritual teacher, I will say to the person, who is that? And often it'll be, well, it's you, or it's this book I read, or, sometimes they may know. The answer is, look in the mirror. That person is your teacher.
Beautiful.
No one comes before in truth and in teaching before the person in the mirror. Beautiful. I am simply a facilitator. So yes, that's how I deal with that situation. But fantastic question, has to be asked. You wouldn't believe the amount of comments I get, like, oh, you're in this for the money and blah blah blah, and and it's sad really when people think that, because it's so far from the truth.
On the other hand, I always find it to be quite okay, if somebody looks at what I'm doing and says, you're an absolute nutter. You're a fruitcake. You don't know, you're just pulling stories out of thin air and you're misleading people, because that's their permission slip not to engage in what I'm doing, and they, for whatever reason, need that permission slip.
Exactly. That's absolutely correct. And the Nine taught me this when I had my very first negative comment on, I think, my 5th video. Upset me the whole night, and I've remembered to this day. It was drug-addled hippie. That's not really that bad, let's face it, but I was so upset, and I just thought, how could anyone say that to me when I'm doing this from the heart with love and service? And so the Nine spoke to me and explained that it was my choice, and if I didn't want to continue working with them and being, releasing videos and being out there in the public, I could make that choice. But if I wanted to continue, then I needed to trust them and they were honest with me. These negative comments will continue to come. And the more people that you draw to you, the more chance of negative comments and negative energy. It will happen. And I needed to find a way to deal with this. But they said to me, we assure you that the positivity will always outweigh the negativity. And that's exactly what's happened. So I deal with that very well on a online, online YouTube, Facebook. I can deal with negativity very well. I can deal with it in my life from work-related individuals, so face-to-face, someone who's communicating with me on a spiritual level. I'm not so good dealing with it when it's my children or my partner or my family, my brother, my sister, my mum. The closer the people are to me, that's where the hard message, that's the hard challenge. But if you can deal with negativity coming in from your loved ones, then that's great, because it will help you to deal with negativity from people that you you aren't that close to. So I always thank my family. Thank you for saying that to me, because you've really helped me to deal with overall negativity, and they learn from it as well. So
Very useful perspective. I have a final question for you about yourself before I want to move our attention to the White Wing Collective. It's this: if you were to be suddenly transported out of this life, magically, out of this body, and were to find yourself in spirit space, whatever you imagine that to be, and if you were to find yourself in that blissful place of being held in the heart of your own spirit entity, and you were asked, is there a song in your heart that is still unsung? Is there a gift in your hands that has not been given? What would your answer be? What is that thing that you would still really want to do here on Earth as Magenta Pixie before you'll be able to skip off into the realms beyond with peace and joy in your heart?
excellent. Well, firstly, if I was given the chance to go, I would, but only if I could come back in a astral projection kind of sense. I wouldn't want to be transported. I want to stay in this life. Had you asked me this question about 6 months ago, I would have had an answer, and that would be, I desperately want to write a book in this lifetime, and I don't want to leave this lifetime until I've written a book, preferably a channeled book. But I've done that now. I've finished it, I think, 3 weeks ago. So it's in the editing process. So that's really the one thing I wanted to do. Anything else would be really, I feel that the response to that question would simply be gratitude for where I am and what I'm doing, and how I wish to progress with what I'm doing, more of the same. That doesn't mean there aren't challenges on the physical level within the third dimension that I wouldn't change, but they are that when you take the challenge and you link it with its reason as to why it's there, and you take the overview, then you realize that the challenge is necessary. So you're thankful for that as well. So I really don't know what gift I would ask for, other than to continue where I am. I feel very blessed to have the connection I do have with the nine, and the people that I meet, the work I do. I feel I've found my mission, and I just wish for it to continue and grow in its natural form, in the way I guess I'm contracted for it to do, or
Beautiful.
released from the contract, however you want to put it.
One of my clients, who's also become something of a friend, talks about an emeritus life. You get to that place where the stuff that you really had to do is done, and
Yes, yes,
you've got the tools, you've got the abilities, you've got the skill, you've got the wisdom, you've got the know-how, and you're here. Boots
yes,
are on the ground. Let's not
yes.
waste it. Let's do the good that we can do.
Exactly. My daughter said to me a few months ago, "Don't you want to go abroad, Mum? You never travel. You don't do anything. Mum, I'm worried about you. You're not living." And
Wow.
I laughed. I said, "Oh, I promise you I am traveling, and I promise you I'm doing the things I want to do. I'm not missing out on anything." And I have other friends as well who say, "You're always working. Don't you want to take a day off and just relax?" And I'm like, they don't
What
understand,
would you do when you relaxed? You'd
Yeah,
be
no,
doing this work.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It is a 24-hour job, because it is your bliss.
Yeah.
It's your love. It's where you will always gravitate. It's my day off from this energy. I would not be in balance if I wasn't in this energy. I'd be cut off from this energy, and I want to be in it. So, and it's difficult to explain that to third dimensional thinking individuals, because work, you have to use the word work. I'd love to say I'm going to do my bliss now, but in the third dimension that doesn't translate. So I say I'm going to work.
Yes.
And I have to in my family, because I've got 5 grandchildren, and if my children think I'm not working, they will be bringing my grandchildren around here for the day. So love them, but I need to let them know I'm working, otherwise I'll be babysitting the whole time.
Right. So I'd like to have a look at the White Winged Collective. It's apparent from the work that you do that you have a very deep relationship with the White Winged Collective, that you have at the very least a very precious spiritual contract with this multi-perspective entity. What can you tell us about your relationship outside of this incarnation? I'm particularly curious to hear how your spirit and theirs agree to do this work that you are now doing?
Wow, that's a great question, and so many ways to explain that. In the book I have just written, this is kind of explained within the metaphor of connecting with the matrix field, and the matrix field being you, but is a holographic replica of source. Therefore, everyone makes the same contract. Everyone makes a contract with source, if you like. It's the ultimate past life contract. So from that perspective, it is the way it is. Creation is that way. Everyone will have a contract. And from another perspective, when you move into a 0 point field, which is a perfect, pure now moment, it is the absolute moment of source. There are no contracts at all. It's just pure, I think people call it isness or being. So that is there with everyone. And when you translate that in a more linear sense, then you're making a contract with the higher self or a collective or an extraterrestrial group, whichever way you want to look at it. So the agreement is there with everybody. It's just a natural way of creation. So that's one way of answering that. But looking at the White Wing Collective Consciousness of 9 as an entity or group of entities as individuals rather than as being my matrix, if you like, then the perspective there would be explained by saying that, we met within an Arcturian consciousness, is what they would say. And we agreed to work, and they agreed to be my guidance system, and I agreed to incarnate, and that they would communicate with me, and at a certain time they would assist me in switching on the DNA codons and assisting me within memory, and that they would guide me. Another way of looking at that is that they are a future aspect of me. I am going to evolve into them. So they have a vested interest in me because I'm them in the past. So whatever I do affects them in the future. So that's 3 different perspectives. But the truest perspective is that the White Wing consciousness, collective consciousness of 9 are that matrix field that we all have, which is a holographic replica of source. It is the DNA. It is the activated DNA, and it is the intelligence of the universe in an infinity times infinity times infinity sense. That is all that's ever happened, all that's happening now, and all that ever will happen on a quantum level. That's who they are, and they are us and all of us. So that's 3 different ways of explaining
Wow.
my connection with them.
Beautiful. It really has helped me to explore fractals, what a fractal is, how it works, the mathematics
Yes.
behind fractals, and I found myself doing fractal art just purely as a yearning to understand this thing which is beyond the mind.
Yes.
That we are all one, we're all connected. That there is this node, this present node that I might label on, but that present node is present everywhere. It is also, if you squint your eyes just the right way and you look at it differently, there it is, and it's magenta, and it's also the White Wing Collective, and it's also a Damu, and it's also it's beyond the mind, but
Yes.
this is how we are all connected and how we're all present in this reality.
Exactly. And fractal art, if you view fractal art and spend time to look at it and work with it, it will be a DNA activation. If you are creating fractal art yourself, that's an even more intense DNA activation, because the memory within the body, within the DNA, responds to the language of light, which is sacred geometry, color, shape, visuals, beyond language. And so art, music, sound, color, these are ways to activate the DNA. If the artwork or the sound is in alignment with a service to others vibration, which will be a vibration of activation. There are artworks and sound available on this planet that can deactivate you. So you follow your alignment to find out where you're going and what particular area you need to look at in order to move into DNA activation. But yes, doing fractal art will help you make sense of reality in that abstract way, so that then you can translate it into language. So you're
Very interesting.
translating the language of light.
So,
Yeah.
so when I was just busy finishing writing my first book, The Ascension Papers, at that time I was also um, doodling around with fractal art, and I had a number of artworks arrive. I mean, I really didn't know what I was doing. I was just messing with the tools, and I had a number of fractal artworks arrive as a channeled work. They were just given to me, and one of
Yes.
them was. If you look on the cover of the Ascension Papers, there's these sort of angel wings things. One of them was one of the wings, and
Yes.
it was just gifted to me. And at the time, I was led to understand that those wings are the whole of the message inside the Ascension Papers. You can read the book, or you can look at the cover. If you look at the cover with your soul, with your deepest perception, the whole of the message is right there on the cover. And I never quite understood it. And listening to you talk about this now, it all falls into place, and that makes sense to me too. So thank you for that.
Yes. Well, the nine would say that those wings, are an alphabetical numeral. When that came through, I thought, well, I've never heard of the word alphabetical numeral, but it's a word that explains a number and a letter simultaneously. There probably are other words to explain this, but it was the nearest thing within my field of awareness when it comes to language. So that's what the wings are. And they speak very deeply to the DNA. The other way of looking at that would be to say that the brain, the right hemisphere of the brain, communicates with the left hemisphere of the brain through picture, through image, through archetype, through symbol. So we have language, words, letters, numbers within the left hemisphere, and we have the symbols and the pictures in the right, and merge them together. That's another way of explaining. So yes, that would be correct. Looking at the wings, if you look with your soul, what it would do is link you into that particular alphabetical numeral. And the translation of that will be unique to each individual. So if it were me and I was looking at wings, I would get, words like flight, travel, higher awareness, transcendence, ascension. So each individual will receive what they need to receive from that alphabetical numeral, from that symbol. So yeah, it's
Very interesting indeed. Now,
yeah,
when the collective is not talking to you, I mean, I understand they are multidimensional and they're kind of everywhere. So I don't even know if this is a question one can ask, but when they're not talking to you, what are they doing? What is their role in this universe and beyond?
yeah. Another fantastic question that I've never been asked, and amazing. Such a wonderful question. I have actually asked the nine this myself, but no one's asked this to me. So, what a great interviewer you are, Zingdad. Yeah. Okay, so what the nine tell me is they are the white-winged collective consciousness of nine as an individualized perspective within a collective by virtue of my communication with them or my awareness of them. That is what gives them that form. When I'm not aware of the nine, which is kind of not really very often, but if I were to go into a place where I was cut off, switched off, and I wasn't aware of the nine, they would not be an individualized collective consciousness. They would be non-individualized.
I
They would just
totally
be
get
within
that.
the, yeah,
So,
yeah,
so I had exactly the same response from Adamu. Um, he helped me to understand uh, that from a certain perspective that he doesn't exist. He is at one with the oneness. He is completely merged with his monadic entity. And when I call him forth, the act of bringing him to my mind is what
yes,
causes the projection of the mask that is
yes,
Adamu, which is a perspective from the entity, which is a perspective from the oneness. So he arrives in my mind because I call him forth. It's
yes.
mind-boggling to conceptualize.
It is. And you need to conceptualize it through image and through metaphor, through symbolism, through alphabetical numerals in the body, feel what it means, and then allow the processing to occur afterwards. It's very much higher echelon, fifth dimensional, and, lower mid, sixth dimensional way of thinking. And it is a difficult one to get your head around because you are thinking within oneness and individualization simultaneously. So having an externalized projection of that source energy is very useful to assist us to communicate with ourselves on the deepest level. So yes, absolutely. And it's difficult to conceptualize of, well, where do the nine go? What do they do? And you will read some channeled information that will say things like when their guides aren't with them, they're very busy, they're posting letters, writing forms, greeting people into their planet, they are, connecting with crystals. All of that's true. But this is a metaphoric presentation of the energy of what that individualized collective would do if they remained an individualized collective. Once you are aware of the fact that there is oneness and individualization simultaneously, then the guidance system that's communicating with you can show you that them off sitting with crystals and posting letters is simply another linear projection of what they are. And when you move out of the linear, there is only the blend, the merge, the oneness, the field, the 0 point, the sea of all. And the minute you think of that entity or consciousness, they take form because they match your thought. Another way of explaining this is to look at particles. Now, I'm really not good with science at all, but the nines say that if you were to look at a particle, and I might get this wrong, but I believe that sometimes a particle is a particle and sometimes a particle is a wave.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, okay. So the reason why the particle and the wave change form is to do with the observer. And I do believe that this has now been discovered in physics, I believe.
Absolutely, yes, quite
Yes.
right.
Okay, so that's what this means. So basically the nine are a particle and I'm observing them so they can become a wave or a wave stroke particle or whatever. But if I wasn't observing them, they wouldn't be a wave or a particle. The reason why the observer makes a difference is because intelligence wants to be viewed. Intelligence wants to be communicated with. So it will show itself all the time to all of us constantly. That's the reason why the
Perfect.
observer is a joint participatory part of the process of that particle or that wave.
And we really don't understand our power in all this. We find ourselves to be small little victim human beings just living on the planet, and we have no power, and we don't understand that we are collapsing
Yes.
endless potentiality into actuality, into physicality by the act of our observing it.
We are exactly doing that. We are the orchestrators of our reality. We are the orchestrators and architects. But it's difficult when you explain that to someone who doesn't really think this way. It's very difficult for them to get their head around. Not only are we the architects and orchestrators of our reality, we are the architects and orchestrators of reality itself.
Indeed. Your entire universe, from the center point of your observation, the entire universe all around you is being observed into reality by you. Now, we are co-creating that. We're doing it together, but it gets way too esoteric. But the bottom line is that your whole reality outside of you is a figment of your imagination. You're creating it by observing it.
Yes, absolutely.
Now, the White Wing Collective have said a great many things to us through you over the years, and I'm sure a great many more things to you personally during this time and also before you started channeling publicly. So I wonder, if you distill it all down, what is the core message at the very heart of all that they have had to say? What is that?
The core message for us on a linear level is whichever way you want to look at it, we have been removed from or had taken from us, or we have fallen away from the original template for man. So on a linear level, if you want to see it as someone stole our original template from us for their own nefarious reasons, that's literally just one perspective. It's true, but it's one perspective. Or we chose to let individuals take that core essence of who we are away from us, or we fell away from it because we wanted to experience what it was like to fall away from it. These are all metaphors. What we are doing now, and what we have the potential to do, is to reconnect with that core essence of what a human really is. We are only part of what a human really is on one level, and we are reconnecting to the all. So we could say at the moment we project with a double helix DNA, and we are able to reconstruct the strands of our DNA into a 12-stranded helix. That's one way of looking at this. Or we are individuals that only use 10% of our brain or 10% of our DNA, and we are now learning to use 100% of our brain and our DNA. Many ways to explain this. On a linear level, the core message is that we are moving into this reconstruction, this recalibrating, this reconnection, this reintegration. That would be the core message on a linear level. But the ultimate core message is simply the remembering of who and what you are. And you only need to look in the mirror and look into your own eyes, open your heart and remember who you are, that you are source, that you are at one with all things, you are a unified being. So the core message really is about remembering who you truly are, which goes way beyond individualized past lives. It goes right back to the ultimate memory. And then beyond that, once you know who you are, the core message would be for you to remember why you are here. And the answer to that would be that ultimately you are assisting yourself or assisting source, assisting the oneness in discovering if it is conscious. Consciousness wants to know if it's conscious, which is a never-ending question. It's an unanswerable question. It is a question that will last throughout infinity times infinity. Is consciousness conscious? And we are all here to discover that. And that's the core message, really, is that never-ending question, why we're here and who we are.
Beautiful. It's apparent to me listening to you talk about these fundamental things. It's apparent to me why we feel the resonance that we do, you and I. That we're so singing from the same songbook.
Yes.
Now,
Yes, we are.
there's from the linear perspective, from the incarnated personalities that are here, it would very much seem to me that we're in a very important phase of this great journey. There was the forgetting process, the process of moving into that state of having lost our connection, into that state of, as you say, however one wants to look at it, having lost the template. Now we've really lost the template big time, and it seems to me we're in the very crucible of rediscovering, remembering, and moving into the return phase, moving back towards the light. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that. That's exactly how it is.
So if we are in the very heart of this transformation right now, if you put on your psychic cap, what do you see coming for humanity? Or perhaps I should ask, what do you see for humanity on the timeline that you yourself are choosing to navigate?
Well, what I see currently as the most probable timeline for humanity, it's a difficult one because individuals will experience different realities. What you believe, what you put out energetically will shape the timeline that you experience. The nine talk about us moving into a timeline split. Not really 100% sure what they're meaning by this, but you are correct in saying that we are at this crucible right now. When we went through the 21st of December 2012 point, that was like that was like the top, the pinnacle point of this climb in energy, and now we're going down the other side. But we appear to be entering into some kind of stargate or wormhole at the moment. In fact, in 2 days' time, it's a culmination point stargate, the 9th of the 9th. And this is a 9-year, 2016 adds up to 9. Then we move into the equinox, and then we have the solstice. So at the end of this year, around the winter solstice or summer solstice, depending on where you are on the planet, there will be a 0 point moment. And at that 0 point moment, rather than being a culmination point like the 21st of December was, this is more about where you choose the timeline you are going to experience. So the most probable timeline for Earth is that we enter this 0 point and we choose our timeline. So it's very important right now as we move through this stargate from the 9th of September right through to the end of this year. Where do we want our frequency to be? Because this will manifest the timeline. So that's looking at individuals manifesting different timelines for Earth. They will all be on the same planet and they'll all be experiencing the same space, if you like, but we'll be experiencing different things, and they won't know that from a linear point of view. Jumping timelines, if you like. If I look on a collective level, and don't look at all these individual timelines that different people are manifesting, but look at the Earth that we are most likely to experience. For the higher dimensional thinkers, the fifth dimensional thinkers, and beyond that, there is a real reconnecting of self and a reconnecting of soul family, coming together with others that are of like mind, celebrations, festivals, healing, music, coming together, understanding in a more profound way than has ever been on this planet. And people are feeling this now. It's been there for quite some time. So much more of that. On a third dimensional level, we are looking at, this collapse, if you like, or this crash down of societal structures. And this is going to be seen in our political arena, within finance, within money. The plans that the service to self groups have had are not coming to fruition in the way that they envisaged. The reason for that is they have had a grasp on the timelines for this planet for thousands of years, and all of a sudden they've lost the grasp on the timelines. It's the star seeds that are controlling the timelines for this planet on a service to others level. So there is still somewhat of a grasp from the service to self groups on the timelines for Earth, but it will be a different timeline. It will be a different Earth. So you could look at this as a positive new dimension and a negative new dimension. I think on a more scientific level, one could call this fourth density positive and fourth density negative, which still encompasses all these different dimensions within that density. So the service to self individuals may get what they want in their reality, and they will have to come to a balance at some point. The reason why they get what they want is because they are here to do a job. This is a contracted job like everything else, but we're not experiencing their reality. We're not experiencing their timeline. So the most probable timeline for those very minority individuals, and I do not mean the entire service to self structure, the entire pyramid, it's just a very, very few individuals that will move gladly into the next phase of their energetic development. That is so far removed from a service to others vibration that it doesn't connect in any way. It doesn't even compute. And even viewing it is not necessary. And the only way you should view it is to know that it is not a possibility for you. In fact, it's been a big thing for the higher consciousness to even show us that probability, because seeing a probability can create a probability. But it's okay now, because we are now in that stargate. We've already created the geometry we need to go through that stargate. So the most probable timeline for us is seeing a collapse within societal structures within the third dimension. These are structures that do not align with the higher purpose. They are within the old energy. They do not serve the purpose of humanity. So this will affect political and money and anyone who's built their business or their foundation on greed, on wanting money, and closed-hearted power, control, energy, rather than open-hearted unity and love. The individuals that are opening their heart to love and who are discovering all of this and working within this energy, things are going to be really good for them, because even though they are manifesting challenges within the third dimension, they are able to transmute challenges very quickly. I would say most third dimensional thinking individuals will be able to transmute a challenge within a day, within 24 hours of Earth time. Might take a little bit longer for some, or it might be instant for others, but roughly 24 hours, any challenge will be transmuted, because they will always look at the worst possible outcome, the best possible outcome, and work out where in between they want to be. Do they want the best possible outcome? How do they not manifest the worst one? And they are navigating their timeline. So that once they do that, they transmute the challenge. So that is what I see for us, more of that experience that we've already had, but it may look pretty drastic to a third dimensional thinking person. Lots of confusion for third dimensional thinking people. Very much, what is the world coming to? This is a horrible place to be, because it is falling apart. It's crashing. And without the foresight of seeing the new blossoming dimension, and it's very difficult to know what is happening. That's really
very easy to
where
get
we're
into
going.
fear when you don't understand the context, which is actually that what's happening is really very, very good news.
Absolutely, yes. Yes, without a doubt.
Pixie, I've so thoroughly enjoyed our chat, and I could just for my own selfish purposes keep talking to you all day, but we really have come to the end of our chat, and I'd just like to ask you if you have a final thought, a final message that you would like to leave with our listeners.
Well, you've just ended our conversation at 11 minutes past 1.
Isn't
So I'm
it
looking at the
perfect?
clock here, and it's 1:11 over here in the UK. So perhaps I should leave a message regarding that. When you see the numbers 111 or 1111, this is very much a connection with your collective. So the individual perspective that I call the white-winged collective consciousness of 9 are with everybody in their own unique presentation. When you see 111 or 1111, that is a connection with that guidance. It is, you were mentioning nodes, it is a node point within your matrix. When you see 1111 or a series of ones or several of the master numbers, 444, 144, 108, these are balanced, symmetrical, living geometries. You stand on a node point. This is a destiny or a fate where all the timelines around you have converged into one point. It creates a stargate. It creates a moment of opportunity, a doorway. It's a message. It's saying you're on the right track. Look around. All is good. All will be well. You are in a place where you can create in a much more intense way, because you're creating within many timelines simultaneously, because all the timelines are stood on the same node point as you. So look out for the 111, look out for the 1111, 1212, 144, 444, 888, 333, 108. Look out for these geometric signs, because this moment right now, when we're moving into the 999 in 2 days' time, then we move into the stargate, into the autumn equinox, and then into the solstice. This is a time where collectively the doorways, if you like, to the sixth dimension are open. What that really means is we are viewing the sixth dimension. We are aware of the sixth dimension. Many individuals have been aware of the sixth dimension for quite some time, but collectively we are coming to the point where we're aware of it. So 21st of December 2012 was a fifth dimensional doorway, if you like. And this year, from 2 days' time through to the end of the year, is a doorway into the sixth dimension. And the sixth dimension is a dimension that communicates with mathematics, shape, and geometry, sacred geometry, living geometry. You talk about your guides being a nomadic, a monadic entity. Well, I believe a monad or a monadic entity is a geometry. It is a living geometric presentation that can change its form between the different platonic solids and create a crystalline matrix and present with light. That's who Adamu is, and the clue is in his title. And the same with the white winged collective consciousness of nine. Why nine? You know, that's the completion, the number of completion, which is where we're going in 2 days' time. It's the 9th of the 9th, 2016, which adds up to 9. So we have this 999 gateway. So look out for the geometries, because they're a map. They are a map to not only your life, but to the life of the collective of humanity. So as you ended this interview on 111, I thought that would be an appropriate time to talk about these sacred master numbers. So are you still there?
Oh, I had my
Oh, yeah,
microphone
you are.
on
Oh,
mute.
okay, that's cool.
So,
I thought you descended for a minute. You completely dematerialized.
Pixie, thank you so much for your time and your energy. That was beautiful, deep information, and I'm sure people have received value on all kinds of levels from this conversation. I really appreciate your spending time with us.
Thank you so much, Zingdad. It's really nice of you to invite me along to be interviewed. I really appreciate it, and it's been lovely. Thank you.
Beautiful. So until we speak again, I wish you all the joy, all the peace, and all the love. Take care, Pixie.
All right, lots of love.
Thank you to you too, Pixie.
Have a great day.
Bye bye now.
Bye.